Jai Maa Tara, Jai Maa Kamakhya, Jai Bhairava. So today I come with another interesting topic, and this may seem a little offbeat, but it is also very real and very important, especially in today's times. The question is simple: are you worshipping a deity, a devata, a god, or are you worshipping a lower entity or a spirit? And this question is something that everybody has to ask themselves at some point or the other. And the origin of the question is very simple. This is because in today's time, when there is an absolute, a flooding of spirituality across the internet, and everybody is showing something or the other, it's all good to know. But how do you know that who is worshipping what? If somebody were to worship a lower entity, for that matter, he or she will obviously not tell you that in public, but it may, one of the signs that happens is that it can still give you some intuitive ability, some kind of lower level siddhis. These come quite easily from lower entities. I mean, they can tell you what is going to happen tomorrow, 10 days later, what is going to happen with XYZ. These things are very easy to for them to give, and this is one of the reasons why at the initial stages of sadhana, siddhis were discouraged. In fact, siddhis were not taken as a sign of progress in the initial stages of sadhana, because it deludes you easily, number one, and number two, they can come from anything. Just because you're worshipping a deity does not mean that and after some days you start seeing that there is a special ability that is developing, that it is actually coming from the devata. It can come from something lower also. These kind of abilities, specifically intuition or some kind of predictive ability or knowing the past or future of individuals, these are very easy for lower entities and spirits to give. Very easy, and it impresses and others get impressed very easily by these things, but that itself is not a true test of sadhana or spirituality. So this problem arises more frequently in the case of people who are in the path of Tantra, specifically worshipping Mahavidya or Bhairava, etc. I have seen instances where people, you may have, suppose you keep a photo or something of Maa Kali specifically, and claim that, I'm getting intuitions from Kali, and Kali is coming and telling me this and that, and some of the predictions are sometimes happening also. And people get impressed by that. That actually literally does not yet mean that it is Kali who is giving you predictions. Imagine for a moment, if you are really worshipping, what is the description of Kali, Mahakali, in the scriptures? She is the greatest of the forces in the universe, of the forms of the Divine Mother. She is beyond the 14 universes, beyond all the lokas, beyond everything. In fact, she intervenes. If she intervenes, she is going to make that person deeply spiritual. Okay. She doesn't come to you to tell you what is going to happen tomorrow and day after and all this small kind of, very basic things which you can find even from a Jyotisha. It's like that story of Buddha that is very famous, where he goes at the bank of a river, and there is a man who has been doing a lot of tapasya, and that man says, I have attained a great thing. Buddha asks, what? And he says that I can walk on water. And the man starts walking. And Buddha, he pays the boatman some small amount of change, and the boatman takes him from one side to the other. And then he asks the man, what is the use of all your sadhana if this is what you have got, which I can get with just paying a boatman? Same way, having some kind of predictive ability means actually not much in my book, and in the book of any genuine Upasaka, by the way, if you go by the traditional way in which judgment of sadhana is to be done, or any kind of claims or things like that specifically. Why I say this is because very often there is a certain structure to the spiritual universe. There is the vital plane that Shri Aurobindo talks about. Vital plane is basically the emotional plane, the physical plane, the emotional body, where these chakras actually function, all the 6 chakras. And then there is the domain of the mind. And beyond that, there is the domain of the gods. Okay, very high. That's why when we say that we are worshipping Bhagwan upstairs or something like that, colloquially we say, it's actually the overhead planes. There are stages beyond the mind. The gods reside in those. The true entity, the true existence of Kali is actually in those planes, not in the lower planes. However, what happens is over time, a lot of people who have approached Kali have added their own imagination into Kali and created their own small formations of Kali. And it is part of a spiritual and occult process, you can actually create a smaller formation of a deity for your own personal benefit. So what happens is that the real Kali is very spiritual. She is of a grandiose nature and very different. She is the cosmic force. She is a universal force. Remember, she can make and break universes. She's you, me, or anybody else is too small for her in the grand scheme of things. Still, out of a kindness, she may come to an individual, but if she does, she is going to transform the individual into somebody spiritual. So, this is the one clear demarcation between a person who is worshipping a lower entity versus worshipping actual Kali, for that matter, or actual Shiva, for that matter. If they come, they will make you sthita pragya. They are spiritual, truly spiritual. Your mind will be drawn away from the material plane. Your lower chakras will not be affecting you. So there will be less amount of jealousy, less amount of vindictiveness, competitiveness, greed, neediness, that there's a hankering for fame, hankering for money, hankering for, oh, I need so many followers. Why is this thing happening? Why is people not following what I'm saying? Why is there no crowd gathering around me? I've seen that in people. I've seen specifically who are very some people who are very desperate to become famous. I've seen that. So their mind is more focused on that, and it makes them more jittery and nervous. There's an insecure energy. Their adhara is not steady. There's always some fidgetiness in their mind, and you can understand this if your mind is very open. You can understand by observing the subconscious motions of an individual very easily. So these things show that there is no spiritual component that is entered into the psyche of the individual, and that component is not entered means a deity is not functioning or interacting with them. Very likely there is a lower entity. So this thing is there. Just because you say that I worship XYZ does not necessarily mean that you are worshipping that. Your real source of spiritual or real source of power or real source of vitality, energy, comes from something else entirely. And the funny part and the crazy part is that many of these entities can even pretend to be gods. Yes, they may even tell you that they are the deity, and they may give, and this happens very often. They come and they tell you that I will tell you what's going to happen some days later, and this and that. So like this, there are many individuals like this. Actually, it's not a new thing today. Because of the internet, you can see a whole lot of people doing a lot of sadhana, and sometimes once in a while when it comes to my notice, I can see, just by observation of the person, you can make out who has a contact with a genuine devata and who has a contact with something lower. Though in verbally they will all say that they are worshipping the great gods, but in reality it's by the subconscious motions, gestures, how they say it, how they talk, you can make out the nature of the energy that they carry. If it's a nervous, insecure energy, energy that's driven by jealousy and envy, competitiveness, these are all malfunctionings of the Manipura chakra. When the Manipura malfunctions, then you're constantly envious, you're constantly judging that why am I not getting this, why is there people not coming to me, why is somebody going to some other place, and half of your consciousness is occupied by trying to struggle with that, and you are trying, the more you try, the more it doesn't happen, the more insecure the person becomes. So that insecurity reflects in their whole aura. Then you know that it is not a deity who's doing it. A deity doesn't care. He or she, if he comes to you, it's going to take you into the transcendental states. And once you enter that higher zones of consciousness, not even the 6 chakras, you go higher, like this, your contact with the material plane will reduce. You will not be affected by this, who is going faster than me, who has more followers, who has more money, who has this or that, why are people listening to this. This is a very common egoistic thing that happens in the spiritual circles. You will not be bothered about that. For example, the greatest of Kaali Upasaks that we know of, greatest, in fact, there's no comparison with him to anybody ever, and neither will anybody ever come to his caliber, is Ramakrishna Paramahamsa. And this, even Totapuri Maharaj, who was his Advaita Guru, Totapuri himself was a person who had no body consciousness, that level of Siddha Mahaprusha. When Totapuri came into, he used to say that there is nobody of the caliber of Ramakrishna ever in Kaali Upasana. You read the Kathamrita of Ramakrishna, you will see not one place do you see he is hankering and lamenting that he XYZ is doing more sadhana, a lot of people are going to him. In fact, even if there were criticisms and all that, he used to take it very mildly. There's nothing, he doesn't. There is that that complete neediness is not there. His consciousness is totally focused on how do I get closer to Kali. The mother used to come to him directly. Even before his gurus came, Kali used to come to him. And that is why today, 100 years later, we worship Ramakrishna as a Siddha. And not just 100, for thousands of years he will be worshipped. Because that is the blessing that Kali gave him. Whereas there are so many hundreds of people worshipping various formations of Kali. They do some worship, then nobody remembers them. It's like a flash in the pan kind of situation that happens. Because that Shakti is not given by Kali. Because not always it is Kali who is coming. It's something else may be coming too. So this is a very clear thing. You read the biographies of saints. Always read the biographies of saints. Ramakrishna, Paramhamsa, Yoga. It's the that's the yogic path. But for Kali, for example, Ramprasad Sen. So you read their biographies. You'll see that there is a constant longing for the deity. There is a constant, deep desire to be in contact with the deity. That shows the mark of a true spiritual depth of the soul. Unless there is authenticity, remember this thing. A deity judges what you do when no one is watching you. That is what will determine whether you are successful or a failure. Not what you say, not what you pretend to be, all that is useless. It is only by that alone that the deity will give or come to an individual or not come to an individual. And whenever a deity, any deity, be it Kali, be it Bhairava, anybody, comes to an individual, it is going to bring about a change in the consciousness. They will not be focused on the lower things, lower chakra. This will not affect them at all. There will be no hankering of why, this is happening, that is happening. There's no great desire for fame, for power, for money. These things will automatically drop from the consciousness. And you know that by observing a person, that who is hankering for what. There are people who may claim that we are worshipping, but deep down, every second, moment, all they can think of is that why is somebody not following me? Why is somebody following them? I've seen this example very prominently in the last 1 year. And immediately you know that their consciousness is stuck in the Manipura chakra. So all their claims that they're worshipping XYZ is all little dubious. Anyway, everybody can do what they want. But the end result is that if you worship the lower entities, one day a fall is guaranteed. This is something you don't need to know any kind of magical interpretive ideas to know this. This is something that has happened hundreds of thousands of times in the history of sadhana, and it will happen again. These lower entities, they are not your friends. They take work from you. You make them work. Work means you ask them for something, they'll give you something. But they'll wait for the day that you make a mistake, and that is when your fall is guaranteed. Okay. Deities are very different. They come to you, they transform you. Even if they are angry on you, they will still transform you. This is the beauty of a Devata, because they have transcended the 6 chakras. They don't exist here. Their anger is divine anger. Their anger also uplifts the Upasaka. When Bhairava cuts off Brahma's head, it transforms Brahma. Brahma becomes like a change. His ego is reduced and he falls down at Shiva's feet and he understands the true spirituality. This is the anger of a Devata. This is the anger of a Rishi. Only deities and Rishis are such beings. Any interaction they have, even if they are angry on somebody, it is going to uplift them. That is not the case with spirits and lower beings, by the way. Lower beings very easily give you abilities, but they also make you insecure and unstable. And I have seen other cases also where people eventually end up in there is a psychic breakdown in the mind. So insecurity, in a certain emotional instability, constant fidgetiness, constant kind of mental aggression or mental belief that there's this subconsciously you feel that energy in them, that they are constantly thinking that why am I not getting this, why am I not getting this. That kind of a neediness, greediness is reflecting in whatever they do, in everything. Every second comment, every second statement they make, you can make out. Even if verbally they may try to say all sorts of good things, but subconsciously and in the small movements and gestures you can make out. That is when you know that whatever entity it is worshipping, that individual claims to be worshipping, is not a deity of the highest caliber. Even if so this is the key thing. Just because somebody says that you are worshipping something does not mean that you are worshipping that. It could very well be one of these lower entities. This happens very often, and in fact Shri Aurobindo had noted this very carefully. in many discussions during with his disciples, and which is written down. Anybody can read those writings. He used to specifically point out to Kali and say there are a lot of people who claim to be Kaali Upasakas are not at all worshipping Kali. They have created some kind of a horrendous formation with their own mind and some kind of a being which just has the name of Kali but is very, very different from the original Kali, which is there in the transcendental planes, the great cosmic deity Kali. And these beings feed on fear. They kind of make the person who is worshipping more unstable. So that's the thing. The signs of spirituality are very clear. If you read the Gita in the second chapter, Arjuna even asks Krishna that what are the signs that a person is spiritual, and tells 1, 2, 3, 4. He never mentions that you will have some ability and this and that. No. Sthita pragyata, calmness. When your mind is devoted to the deity, to the divine, your lower chakras are not disturbing your mind. Anything that disturbs will reflect in your actions automatically. So by judging the actions, by judging how they behave, what they speak of, you can get a very clear idea that what is there that is grasping the individual's consciousness. So worship the deities, read the biographies of saints, transcend yourself, transcend the limitations that you have, transcend that which is trying to pull down your consciousness. Jealousy, competitiveness, envy, greed for money, greed for power, greed for relationships, all these things are activities of the lower chakras, and they are distortions of the lower chakras, doshas. Whenever you worship a deity, develop the bhakti and the shraddha, so that ask them to take you out of these things. Once you're out, then only you will understand he or she can take you to the real spiritual planes. And in those spiritual planes, there's a lot of calm, there's a lot of bliss, there's a lot of transcendence and universality. And you see a different picture. You see as if you're outside of the world, outside of the universe. Your mind expands. All these things everything else around you will seem too small, too minor. So that's all for today. I hope it was helpful. Jai Maa Kamakhya, Jai Bhairava Baba, Jai Matara.